The Consulting Success podcast is powered by the Clarity Coaching Program. If you'd like to work directly with the Consulting Success team and receive personal coaching and support to optimize and grow your consulting business, marketing, and revenue, visit consultingsuccess.com to find out more and apply.
Welcome to the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zapersky. In this podcast, we'll dive deep into the world of elite consultants, where you'll learn the strategies, tactics, and mindset to grow a highly profitable and successful consulting business. Hey everyone, it's Michael Zapersky here, and today I have Melanie Parish. Melanie, welcome.
Hi, Michael. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, I'm excited for this. Melanie, you're an award-winning coach, a speaker, a consultant, a workshop leader, and an author. We'll talk about your book here coming up in just a little bit. But your clients range from Fortune 50 companies, and you've worked with organizations and people in organizations like Microsoft and Netflix and New Relic, all the way to startups. You specialize in executive coaching, helping leaders to thrive and adapt in fast-paced environments. Before we get into this and kind of really look at what you're doing today, I want you to take us back to something that we just talked about before we hit record, which is that you actually had a bit of a start in management consulting where you were actually selling kind of IT consulting into some very large organizations, some Fortune 50 organizations. So take us back to Melanie in those days. What exactly were you doing and kind of, what was happening there?
Well, I was already a coach when I did that. And it was interesting. I actually had a client who we were talking about sort of the things that he wanted to do. And it became clear that I had some skill sets. My background was in sales and marketing before I went into coaching. And it was really fun to sort of join that team as the person who was doing business development. He was a speaker, he was a consultant, he was an author. And he could ask higher speaking fees when I would do sales for him. And that's kind of how it started. And then he started to have inquiries, and he would, as he would speak, he would get inquiries, and then he would turn those over to me and I would start to work them through. And because I wasn't bad at design for one-off engagements for consulting, I wasn't bad at being able to visualize what you're going to deliver. And so we were going into a Fortune 50 company at one point. And I remember when we were talking to them, I said, we thought we might come in small. And they said, no, bigger. And it became clear that sort of in the procurement process, they had a limit on a one-time spend for an outside consultant. So we didn't have to go through their procurement office. And so they wanted us to max out our first engagement. And I think that's super interesting. I learned a lot through that, because what changed for me when I did that was I started a much more collaborative process when I'm pitching someone. It's like, hey, what do you want the dollar figure to be? There's no magic in putting together a proposal. They know how much they want to spend, and kind of what your hourly rate or your day rate or whatever is for whatever engagement you're delivering. So there's no reason to posture and go back and forth. It can really be a collaborative process to try to get the numbers to be right.
So what have you seen? I'll play the devil's advocate for a moment here as we kind of explore this together. Let's say that you're talking with a buyer and you say, what's the number that works for you? And they say, well, it's 20,000, but maybe in your mind, to provide what they have told you they need and they want, in your mind, it was 75,000. How would you then kind of do that dance together to arrive at a number that ultimately works for both people?
Well, I think what they're signaling when they say 20,000 and you're thinking 70 is you're thinking you're going in as a full engagement. You're going to have to pitch them. And one thing I also find is in the sales process, it's much faster if you can sell them an assessment or a small bite, and then you actually get paid to pitch them. So if they're saying 20,000, essentially they're saying we want to pay you 20,000 to do an assessment and pitch us. That's all they've told me. It's not that they're not willing to pay me 70,000. It's that they're only willing to get me there to have a conversation.
Right.
And so that's what that tells me is how much commitment do they have going in up front? They know their own constraints. So they're saying it's really easy for me to spend 20,000. I might try to get them to 30 or maybe even 50, but I wouldn't try to talk them into 70.
Right. So for you being straight about it being very upfront about what's your budget, what do you have in mind, what are you able to allocate for this, is a question that you've found not only have you become comfortable asking, but you've actually found it to be effective for you in the sales process. Is that correct?
I find it to be so much more effective just to be really collaborative with people, to find out what they need. There's no magic to the numbers. Everybody has a day rate. And the same is true in salary negotiations. If you go in and you're like, oh, I'm going to play hardball, I want this, then people have to react, and then they have to be tough, or they have to acquiesce or something. But if you can say, I really want this job, and if you could just, how far can you get me closer to this other number? I want it. I want to be collaborative. I don't want you to lose anything in this process, but I'm hoping you can stretch me up to here.
Right. So let's now talk a little bit about the work that you're doing with clients. You work with leaders on a daily basis, and you obviously are made aware of and hear about the different challenges that are facing leaders today. So what do you see as, like, what comes up often when you're talking with your clients as common challenges for leaders? What are maybe a couple of things that just you hear over and over again that you likely are on the minds of many other listeners right now?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest ones is that I'm hearing a lot, especially in tech right now, is just clarity of vision, of role. There's companies that are putting money into new areas and new positions, and they're not quite clear on what they want those people to do. So they have big pocketbooks, but the vision isn't always clear. And so a lot of what I coach on is challenges with people working with people. They're managing up, managing down, trying to affect the change that people want to have in their companies, in their organizations, with the human resources that they work with.
Right. And what does that look like? So, let's say you're starting to work with a new client. How do you kind of onboard them? What's your process to learn about that client so that when you actually start the engagement, you're able to kind of hit the ground running, or to make the greatest impact and provide the most value? Do your clients fill in an assessment? Like, just kind of walk us through. Let's say I signed up with you today. What would happen next?
Yeah, I have a fairly comprehensive questionnaire that I send out, and I always say their work starts that day. Mine starts usually about 10 days later. I ask them to go into as much detail. I ask them to send me anything they've ever done in their own work on mission and vision and values, anything they have that they've already done, but I don't ask them to try to create that at that point. And then I spend 2 hours with an individual client. It's different if I'm working with a team or an organization, but with an individual client, I spend 2 hours. I always say that's the hardest 2 hours I ever work with them, getting to know them, getting to understand their hopes, their dreams, their fears. A lot of times the people that come to me now, my practice is really stable. I have one client I've had for 20 years. My clients don't leave me, but when they do, I often will take 1 or 2 new individual clients a year, and then my practice is full. And when they come to me, often they're new leaders, and they've been promoted because they were great individual contributors, and they get promoted, and all of a sudden they're in leadership and they have no idea what to do. And they are suffering from imposter syndrome. I heard a great recent podcast that you did on that, and I really enjoyed it. I think that they're suffering when they come to me. And so the first thing is to try to figure out how we can alleviate the suffering and have them get on some kind of a path where they are trying new things and experimenting with their leadership to try to get their feet and to take some of the pressure off.
Right. A lot of the work that you're doing, it could be viewed as delicate. It's deep work. You're not just talking about a brochure or a product. I mean, you're often talking about things that are going on inside the heart, the soul, the mind. How do you establish rapport with a new client? Are there specific questions that you've found that work really well? And I'm asking from the perspective of the consultant listening to this right now who would like to get better at establishing rapport quickly with new clients. Is there anything that you've learned, any questions or approaches that have worked well for you to establish rapport with new clients?
Yeah. And the thing that I'll say is I never take a client if I don't believe I can love them. Like, I actually have to be willing to care about them that deeply, because it's hard work to go into someone's life and hear their biggest challenges all the time.
Yeah. So before you get to my question in answering it, but how do you assess that before you take on a client?
I do. I always do. I call it a chemistry session with someone. If they're thinking about hiring me, I would never start with someone without that session.
And how long is that session?
It's usually, 45 minutes to an hour.
Okay. And it's a one-on-one conversation.
One-on-one conversation just to see if we're a good fit for each other.
And what are you covering there? Like what kind of questions are you asking in that session?
Mostly I ask them sort of where they are and where they want to go. Like what's the thing they're hoping that coaching will change for them? Like they want a change to happen. What is it? Give me the roadmap.
Yeah.
And I learn a lot in that conversation. I've had people that just want to make more money. I'm not a good fit for them. Money's fine. Money's easy. Money is just flow. And all my clients make more money when they work with me. That I can guarantee. I usually need 6 months to a year, but I pay for myself. There's no question in my mind about that. But they need to be up to something bigger than money. So I find that out and I find out what they're dreaming of. And I want to make sure their values and my values align.
And so that's that initial chemistry session that is free. They don't pay for that?
They don't pay for it.
Okay. And
I don't offer them. I only offer them to clients who are very serious about hiring me.
Right. And so when you get on those calls, are you providing any feedback or guidance or recommendations, or is it really just asking questions, listening to them, and then deciding together if it makes sense to take a next step?
I think they would feel like I'm providing value. I am asking very strategic questions to find out what I want to know, but I think the questions are very carefully calibrated for them to feel like they're getting value while I do that.
Got it. Okay. So you have the chemistry session. If the chemistry is there, you move to the next step, which is now that they become a client. So yeah, any specific questions that you ask or approaches or things that you do to build rapport quickly to get that person feeling comfortable with you, so the project and kind of engagement, starts off on the right foot. While we work with a lot of seasoned and experienced consultants here at Consulting Success, I'm often contacted by new early stage consultants. Invariably, the question I'm asked is, what are the steps I should take to become a successful consultant and grow my consulting business to my first 6 figures per year? Well, I'm excited to announce that we've opened the doors for our Momentum program. This is our most popular program for early stage consultants, and it has helped almost 1,000 consultants to start, run, and grow successful consulting businesses. It gives you the step-by-step plan to help you with your messaging, your fees, and pricing strategies, how to win more proposals, how to go to market more effectively, developing a marketing system to generate leads consistently, and so much more. And right now, until September the 19th, you can sign up for Momentum and get 50% off the regular price by going to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO. Only 100 spots are available to join Momentum and get 50% off. This deal is only available until September the 19th or until all 100 spots are gone. We won't be opening up new spots in this program for several months, so don't wait. Go to consultingsuccess.com/audio. That's consultingsuccess.com/audio, AUDIO.
There's 2 things that I notice when clients first come to me. One is sometimes they have a lot of voices running in their head, like negative voices running in their head. And I have to figure out how to quiet those so that we can coach. And sometimes that takes years. I've had clients that it takes 2 years to still the voices so that we can get going on the work. But that's really deep work to try to disengage those voices.
How do you identify that? How do you identify if someone has voices going on in their mind?
They tell you, you know. I had somebody say to me today, I'm nothing. What I did was nothing. It's like you hear the language. They say it out loud. And those voices aren't helpful. I have to fight them to get them to be really successful people.
Right.
So I really want to quiet those voices. Other thing that I want to do is slow down the way that they process information. So like when we're talking, you're nodding, you're looking, you're taking a pause before your talk. But often when people start to tell their stories the first time, it's like a reel that they've run 1,000,000 times in their head. And I have to get them where they're thinking new thoughts.
Right. Makes sense.
Because they have to learn.
Right. So when you're working within these organizations, you're working with leaders within companies, right? And so that might be a company as big as a Microsoft down to a startup. When someone decides to engage your help and to work with you, is that typically done on their own dime, or are the organizations paying for these leaders to have the coaching and the support?
It goes both ways. And sometimes it starts one way and then switches to another. I prefer people to pay me individually. This is just total
Why?
Because they pay on time. I have the credit card on file and they pay on time. I have to jack my rates if I'm going to charge somebody like Microsoft because they're going to make me go through a procurement process and all of that. It's so much easier if they just get reimbursed for coaching. So I'll actually charge a premium if I'm working with a company as opposed to an individual.
Got it.
Because it actually takes more accounting time.
Hey, it's Michael here, and we'll be right back to the podcast. But first, are you ready to grow, scale, and take your consulting business and marketing to the next level? If so, our Clarity Coaching program may be a great fit for you. You'll work with our experienced team to set up a strategic plan for your business and coach you step by step in areas like how to consistently attract more leads, develop a magnetic message that resonates with your ideal clients, strategically package and position your services, earn higher fees, win more proposals, and scale your business. To find out more about Clarity Coaching and apply, go to consultingsuccess.com and click on coaching.
Let's kind of get into the marketing side and the client, like acquisition. You mentioned you're at a stage where your business is almost always full, right? You might have in a year's 12-month period, 1 to 2 spots that when they're filled up, you kind of close the doors again. How did you get to that place? Like that's the place that a lot of people want to be in. That's what everyone's after. So what did you do to fill the floodgates with opportunities and with people that you can serve and add value to?
Well, it's a question I think about a lot. There's a couple of things that I've done that I think have an impact. Not positive they have an impact. So every now and then I try to ask my clients what I do that has them stick around, and they're not always clear either. But I think there's a couple of things. One is my clients don't leave. I don't have very many client acquisition challenges.
Right.
I just don't have to replace them all the time.
Yeah.
That's one thing. But the reason I think they stay, so I tend to focus on what keeps them interested. I have really deep relationships with them. They text me, I text them right back. I try to be with them on their journey. I try to be available.
How do you do that? Because I think one thing you mentioned right now, and I don't want people to gloss over this because I'm guessing some people are listening to this or watching this and going, okay, so yeah, that's great, Melanie. Your clients stick around a long time, but how do you get your clients, right? I want to know how to get new clients. The focus with people is so often about new clients, but what the gold nugget that you just shared is you don't need tons of new clients because you have your existing clients just stick around for a long time. That's the best kind of business because there's no cost to acquire new clients or fewer, lower cost to acquire because you don't need as many clients. So what do you think really adds to that dynamic where you're able to keep your clients for so long? What are you intentionally doing or what kind of systems have you put into place that allows you to do that?
There's a few things that I think I do. One is I'm always investing in my own professional development. I'm always bringing new things that I'm the go-to person in their organization for.
Can you give an example of that? What would that be?
Last year I did Seth Godin's Alt MBA.
Okay, so let's just stop for 1 second if you don't mind. So I'm familiar with that program, right? And Seth's an amazing guy. So you learn a bunch of stuff. What do you do with that? Give an example of something that you learned at the Alt MBA that you now took and delivered or imparted to your clients.
I mean, for me, I finished my book. It was huge for me. That was the big takeaway. I just actually found my little workbook that was my Ship It journal, and finishing my book was the big takeaway for me.
Okay. But what did you do with the book? How does that help you to keep a client around?
During the year, my clients they've previewed chapters. They all have a copy in their hands already. They got advanced copies in their hands. They have so been a part of this process. Some of them are featured in my book. I got permission from them. I had a client today. I had a newsletter go out. She runs a multi-million-dollar international company, and she sent me a text that said, "Your logo's too big," on my newsletter. She is on me right now. She is going to make sure I am as successful as I possibly can be.
Right.
But she feels included in the process. And so as I'm doing all this stuff, I had another client who said, "Oh my gosh, reading your book was really spooky because it's just like talking to you for a really long time."
Right.
But they feel me and they feel like they've been a part of the process. So sharing excitement about what I'm up to makes me an interesting person, and that makes my clients stick around.
Do you share challenges with them?
Absolutely.
Vulnerabilities?
Absolutely.
I'm wondering how much of your clients sticking around comes from the fact that you essentially have weaved your web into theirs. Like there's that connection, as you said, like they feel like they are deeply connected to you. And I'm asking because I think what a lot of people do is they actually don't bring their clients into any of that. They only want to show their clients the end product. So for example, take your book. They don't want to tell anyone about the book or show inside because there might be errors or like they're so concerned about all the things that could go wrong or the vulnerabilities that they only want to really blast it out there when something has worked or it's completed. And I'm wondering, do you feel that by bringing people into the process, even in the kind of the murky middle, that's actually what's adding to strengthening the relationship?
Absolutely. I think going on the journey together, and I will say, I try to stay just slightly more professional than your best friend.
Right.
like I'm the best friend, but I don't want to fart in public. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, it's like a little shinier version, but not like one that's so polished that I have no foibles.
Right. So they can relate to you, but they also turn to you because it's like you are one of their best friends. You're someone that they can really trust. And that trust comes because it sounds like you really open up everything that you have going on.
There's a coaching skill, though, called self-management, and I adhere to it religiously.
Tell us about it.
Well, when I'm talking to them, they've paid me for my time to talk about them. When they say, "How are you?" I'm great. I'm always great. They need me to be great.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I might say, "Oh my gosh, I have this challenge," but I'm still great I'm coping with it.
Sure.
I'm not bringing my broken self to them. I'm bringing wholeness and vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
But I am managing. I am using the skill of self-management to have a real relationship that has vulnerability where I'm still a professional.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, so let's get back to the marketing side. Your focus is really maintaining clients, and you do a great job, obviously, and that's why they stick around, and in addition to everything else that you mentioned. But it wasn't always like that. You had to start someplace. You had to get your clients. So take us back to the early days, or that period where you didn't have a full book of business. What were you doing? What kind of got you into these initial organizations that then led to the next round of business?
Interestingly, I think the biggest jump in my business was when I did 2 coaching certifications, one through CTI, which is individuals, and then I did an organization and relationship systems certification. And they required me to go out and get clients for my work, for my certification, so that I could get the hours so that they would be the check mark. And I have to say that probably pushed me into organizations. It made me start to see opportunities to say, "Hey, I see this thing and I think I can help you in a really different way."
Walk us through that, because it sounds like you already knew a bunch of people in organizations and you just said, "Hey, can I help you?" But to a lot of people, that would be extremely scary unless they have those relationships already. So it's specifically, what did you do? You had to go and get a certain number of hours to get your certification. Who did you approach? What did you say?
One of the largest team coaching engagements I ever had was through my church. They had an issue. We did large group work, 60 people in the room at the same time, working on culture and helping them be in better relationship with each other. I can say this and talk about them because it's actually what we won the Prism Award for. But doing that work, so I resigned from the church. I was actually on the church board at the time. I resigned from the board. I resigned from the church in order to be an external provider so that I didn't have skin in the game. And then I brought in somebody else to co-lead with me in order to do it. And it was a huge engagement. And you think churches don't have money, and they come up with a full fee. And we did really good work. It's probably the work in my career that I'm most proud of.
Okay.
Most interesting work I've done in a large group setting.
Right. And so beyond that, as you started moving into working with other organizations, how did you get those initial clients?
I tried a bunch of different things. I tried going to an HR conference and having a booth there. I got a client, but really the cost of the client acquisition was higher than, it was too high.
Yep.
Also, it wasn't a really great client. It seems to be through word of mouth. And then I get a client, I get an individual client, and then they have a team and they say, "Well, could you do some work with our team?" So I work with a healthcare team in the town I live in.
Right.
And I coach one of their leaders. I started that way. Then I started to do some retreats for their admin team. Then I started to do I did a 360 with their executive team. And then now I'm coaching another leader on their executive team. And I'll probably do another round of 360s with their executive team. And then they had an HR problem, so I worked with another team. So it's one client turns into more work.
Right. And do you find, are you looking for those opportunities to add more value and provide additional services to your clients? Or are your clients typically just saying to you, hey, Melanie, like, can you help us with this or help us with that?
Well, if I can see a way that I can provide value, then I will. And if I believe they need the value I can offer, I will push hard.
Right.
I'll be like, we need to do this. I've said to clients, I need to be on a plane to your next retreat. Here's the list of what we need to cover. If I'm in their business, if I'm in the business of the CEO, it's really easy to do that when I see a need. I never do it if there's not a need for me. I never try to snooker them or try to get the money. I don't go after the money. I go after, how do I help the people?
Yeah. Awesome. That's the right way to do it. You have a new book, The Experimental Leader. Tell us about the book and why you wrote it.
I've been writing this book for 7 years, the longest I've done anything.
Yeah.
And I'm super excited about it. It is the culmination of a set of tools and ways that I work with my clients. And because I wrote it over such a long period of time, it was really clear to me what I needed to include. It's 130 pages long. It's about the time that you would need to do on an airplane ride.
Right.
But it's really meaty material. So I wanted to have a way to share the things that I do one-on-one with my clients with a larger audience.
Mm-hmm.
People ask me what I do. I wanted to be able to share it with them. I think leadership is so hard. It's such worthy work. People are trying so hard and they're flummoxed. They don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I want them to succeed. And so I wrote this book as I didn't put it out in hardback. I put it out in paperback. I want to see copies that are thumbed and people write in the margins and that they really try to apply the things. I'm finding as I pass it out to clients, they read about 4 or 5 chapters and then they set it down for a minute because they have to absorb and start to try to integrate the learning.
Mm-hmm.
And then they're going to pick it up again. So I'm really excited. I'm going to introduce a course that will go along with it, a companion course that'll be, somebody could do it in 6 months to a year.
Right. You're self-publishing this?
No, it's through Page 2.
Okay.
Page 2's the publisher. They're out of Vancouver and they're a great little Canadian publisher, but it's being released in the US and Canada.
Got it. So before we wrap up, a question that's on my mind here, you have a business that is already quite booked up. You've now written your book, right? 7 years in the making to spread the message even further. How do you think about kind of scaling and growth and leverage in your business? Because here you're kind of at capacity, but it seems by putting out the book and probably have some desire for greater impact and greater growth. Just talk to us a little bit about, like, how do you think about scaling? Are you interested in, have you ever thought about bringing on additional coaches or consultants or doing train the trainer models or licensing or anything like that? Like, what are your thoughts from a business perspective around what you're doing?
Yeah, I am really excited about the experimental leader material. So it's one of the reasons I'm doing online courses, because I want to be able to take people through step by step. I want them to have me for lots of time without me having to provide it. So that's
right.
one thing. I do have a plan to offer coaching and to bring on some other coaches to offer coaching for that program.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a really natural fit. I think it'll be really fun for the coaches. I have access to lots of amazing coaches
mm-hmm.
that aren't good at sales. They
right.
don't know how to bring in business. So that seems like a real natural place to go with that material.
Is there any reason that you've held off to this point? Is it a sign that you considered, and I'm asking because sometimes people are thinking about doing things, but then maybe they start and they realize they didn't have the right ingredient, or maybe they hold off too long. So just any perspective that you have about why you're now thinking about this as opposed to, let's say, a year ago or 2 years ago.
I had a fairly decent sized coaching company about 10 years ago, and it got hit really hard by the recession. My clients I had one client that was in manufacturing Like their tagline was, "We own the slab." And like it was early manufacturing and their business just like stopped overnight. I was really vulnerable because if you have a large coaching company, you have lots of you have 3 clients. And if they all get hit hard, your business is really challenged quickly.
Sure.
I also found that I'm a great coach and I didn't love the administration side. I'm 10 years longer into my career, but I do love the delivery. I love the client work. So anything I do will need to keep me doing the work I love.
Got it. Makes sense. So Melanie, where can people find out more about you and your book?
Sure. My book is on Indigo. It's on Amazon. You can look it up there. The Experimental Leader, Be a New Kind of Boss to Cultivate an Organization of Innovators. And you can also come to my website, and if you sign up to get my emails and communication, there's a great article that's 3 things you can stop doing today to be a better boss tomorrow.
Right. And that's melanieparish.com, correct?
Yes. Thanks for that.
Not a problem. We'll have everything linked up in the show notes as well. Melanie, I really want to thank you for coming on here today and sharing with us.
It was so interesting to talk with you about all of the ways just to think in new ways. I really, really enjoyed it.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. For more episodes and to subscribe, rate, and leave a review, head on over to iTunes. And if you'd like to develop consistent lead flow and a highly profitable consulting business, learn more about our coaching programs at consultingsuccess.com.